In this training, we will assess the likelihood, impact, and detectability of a risk to determine the severity of the risk. You've identified a risk and written a risk statement. Now what? How do you know if this risk should require a lot of time and resources to manage, or if you should focus on other risks? We can prioritize risks by assessing the severity of each risk. To assess the severity of a risk, we'll look at 3 different aspects of the risk. 1. The likelihood that the risk will occur. 2. The impact if the risk does occur. And 3. The detectability of the risk. These 3 risk aspects create the acronym LID. It's easy to remember that we want to keep a lid on our risks. Let's look at likelihood, impact, and detectability in depth by using an example. I work in an office that has a toaster oven. I've identified a risk that a fire could start if someone overcooked their food. My risk statement could be, if the toaster oven caught fire due to an employee overcooking their food, then loss of life could result. To determine the severity of this risk, we'll use a ranking system of low, medium, and high to assess the likelihood, impact, and detectability. We'll start with likelihood. What is the likelihood of loss of life due to the toaster oven catching fire? When assessing likelihood, impact, and detectability, consider controls that are already in place to reduce the risk, such as smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, and a sprinkler system. Those systems will warn people to leave the building in case of a fire and prevent the fire from spreading. I'll give the likelihood that the toaster oven caught on fire and led to a loss of life a low ranking. Next, we'll assess the impact of the risk. Again, we'll use a scale of low, medium, and high. You might be tempted to assess the impact of a fire as high, because a fire in the building could lead to a loss of life. But remember, we have systems in place to reduce the impact of a fire, because those systems are likely to warn people to leave the building in case of a fire and contain the fire. I'll give the impact a medium ranking. Finally, let's rank detectability. Detectability assesses the ease of discovering and correcting a hazard prior to harm occurrence. Earlier detection of a risk allows for additional mitigation before the risk becomes an issue. For detectability, we use an easy, moderate, and difficult ranking. A fire in the break room would be easy to detect, especially after the fire alarms and sprinklers went off. I would give this detectability an easy ranking. However, a fire inside a wall caused by old wiring could be much harder to detect and receive a moderate or difficult ranking. Now, we'll combine our likelihood, impact, and detectability rankings to determine the severity of our risk. We have a low likelihood, medium impact, and easy detectability ranking. But what do these rankings mean? How do you compare a risk that has a low, medium, easy ranking to a risk with a low, medium, difficult ranking? Assigning a numerical value to low, easy, medium, moderate, and high, difficult allows us to determine a severity score and compare the different risks. Low, easy has a value of 1. Medium moderate is 2, and high difficult is 3. In our example, the likelihood has a value of 1, impact has a value of 2, and detectability has a value of 1. We'll multiply these values together to create a severity score. The severity score helps determine which risks to focus on. My severity score is 2, so according to this severity chart, this risk has a low severity, mostly because we already have systems in place to manage fire risks. A low severity score means that while we're aware of the risk, we can spend our time and resources focusing on risks with a higher severity score. A quick note: use your judgment when determining which risks to focus on. A risk that has a lower likelihood but a serious impact might warrant extra attention. To review, to determine the severity score for a risk, you must assess 1. The likelihood that the risk will occur, 2. The impact if the risk does occur, and 3. The detectability of the risk, or how easy it is to discover and correct a risk prior to harm occurrence.